World War I in 10 minutes. Take a moment to look through the table of contents. Introduction. Have you ever wondered what occurred in the First World War? Known as World War I, it shocked history as it brought the life of the trenches, the anger and hate that heated Europe, and the tragedy it brought families in the past. Who had brought the Great War? How did the war get involved, and who was found guilty? Together in this video, let's learn about World War I. How it all started, the death shot. The First World War all started with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. This took place on June 28, 1914, at Sarajevo, Bosnia. You see, it was Serbia's dream to control Bosnia, but Austria-Hungary, Serbia's neighbor, took it first. Serbia, of course, grew angry, so a group of Serbian nationalists planned to assassinate the heirs to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Now, on June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was waving to the loving crowd, writing to the Austrian government, but even he knew that danger was ahead. The first assassination attempt was a failure. The bomb bounced off the back of the car, exploding minutes later. The next assassin thought the bomb has done its job and doesn't shoot when the car passes by. The second attempt also failed. The third assassination attempt occurred after the Archduke departed the Austrian government. The couple intended to go to the hospital, but the driver makes a fatal mistake. He took a dark wrong turn straight into the mercy of Gavrilo Princip. The assassin's bullets found the heir, then his wife, which sparking anger and war. Austria-Hungary then points fingers at Serbia for the death of their heir and issues a ultimatum. Serbia agrees to most of the demands, yet Austria-Hungary still declares war with the Germans in support. Russia and France then sides with Serbia, with Britain coming soon after. The Great War has begun. If you look at the map of Europe, you will find France west of Germany and Russia on the east. Now, in the war, France and Russia fought against Germany, so in order to fight them both, Germany had to split troops, food, money, etc. This gave the Allies the upper hand. For the war, knowing France and Russia were bound to ally as the war tension rose, Alfred von Schlieffen had come up with a plan to quickly rid France of war before turning to the east to face Russia. In August 1914, the plan went into operation and by the 14th crossed the Belgian border. By the end of the month, the Germans invaded northern France. Fearing the capture of Paris, the French government moved to Bordeaux, but the Germans continued to surround the city. However, the troops of Paris attacked the Germans, pushing them back, marking the failure of the Schlieffen Plan. Consider being a soldier in the war, living in the trenches. What would you say? A ditch dug into the ground was the safest place to be. Safest, but not very safe. The place was infested with rats, lice, and diseases. Doctors have shown that lice can cause trench fever, which resulted in headaches, fever, and muscle pain. Living in the unsanitary, wet conditions over long periods of time resulted in trench foot, a frostbite-like infection. The trench stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border. The idea was to dig a hole into the ground to avoid being shot. Each dawn, soldiers gathered to guard the front line. This was called Stand 2. If no assault, soldiers scattered for inspections, rations, and breakfast. Following the morning routine comes chores, where soldiers took on any chores, such as filling sandbags or repairing duckboards. Afterwards, soldiers read, wrote letters, kept journals, or gambled. During night was the busiest and most dangerous as soldiers climbed out of the trenches and ran to the no-man's lands to dig new trenches or fix barbed wires. This was just the normal routine, if no attack. The U.S. is in. For the start of the war, the U.S. stayed neutral. However, on April 2, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson went to request a declaration of war against Germany. He cited Germany's violation of its pledge to suspend unrestricted submarine warfare and its attempt to ally with Mexico against the U.S. as his reasons for war. On April 4, 1917, the U.S. had entered the war. At the time, Germany had been leading submarine attacks on the ships sailing across the Atlantic. One reason behind Wilson's decision to lead the U.S. into war, following the sinking of the unarmed French boat known as the Success, Wilson threatened to sever all diplomatic relations with Germany unless Germany kept from attacking all passenger ships and allowed enemy ships to leave the boat due to attack. The German government accepted all terms, which became known as the Success Pledge. However, by January 1917, representatives from the German Navy convinced the military leaders in the Kaiser Wilhelm II that the unrestricted submarine warfare could help Germany defeat Great Britain within 5 months. German policymakers argued that they could violate the Success Pledge because the U.S. could not be considered neutral after supporting the Allies. German Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg protested this decision, believing this would draw the U.S. into war on the side of the Allies. He argued that the coming of the U.S. would bring Germany's downfall. Despite the warning, the German government resumed unrestricted submarine attacks, thinking the war would end long before the U.S. arrived Europe. On January 31, 1917, German Ambassador Johann von Bensdorf sent the U.S. a note declaring Germany's intentions to resume unrestricted submarine attacks. The U.S. held back from war. On January 19, 1917, British naval intelligence intercepted and decrypted a telegram sent by Minister Arthur Zimmermann to Mexico that Germany would help recover the land that the U.S. took if Mexico helped Germany in the war. At first, the British had not shared this information with the U.S. because they were afraid that Germany would find that British codebreakers broke a German code. But then they saw the submarine problem and used the telegram to sway the U.S. into war with the Allies. On April 4th, 1917, the British got what they wanted. The U.S. joined in. The final year. The Russian government became very unpopular as the war progressed, and in February 1917, a revolution overthrew the Tsar, but the new government still continued the war. In October, a second revolution brought the Bolshevik Party to power. A ceasefire was agreed with Germany, and in March 1918, Russia signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and left the war. Now the Germans can focus on the Western Front. But the Allied blockade of Germany's port kept Germany short on supplies and food was scarce. Ottoman Turkey, Bulgaria, and Austria-Hungary collapsed due to Allied attacks. By early November, only Germany stood for the Central Powers. So on November 7th, Germany started talking for peace with the Allied. Conclusion: the First World War was not pretty, nor was the cost. Such shocking events and horror that appeared in the war, but at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, the trenches grew silent, and the guns no longer shot their bullets, for peace had come. The Allies wanted to make sure this never happened again, and forced Germany to pay heavy fines. Hopefully this video had answered all your questions. The credit goes to the book Eyewitness World War I, for I took information mainly from this book. Thank you for listening.